name is Alyssa Monroe. I'm 25. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when the people who raised you decide humiliation is the only language you deserve? Naples wasn't Florence. The air smelled of fried dough and salt, not wedding roses and champagne. I stood on the curb with my suitcase, wearing a pale silk dress meant for photographs that would never exist. My phone lit up, not with love, but venom. LOL, didn't want to invite you, my brother typed, as if my absence were a joke worth $77,000. Then came Mom's dagger. Stop faking confusion, it's your fault. It wasn't just rejection. It was annihilation. Every receipt, every deposit, every midnight call where I handled his chaos, it meant nothing. I had been nothing but a wallet with a heartbeat. I wandered the narrow streets, dragging my suitcase across uneven stone, each wheel catching like my breath. The Vesuvian skyline loomed, but I felt smaller than ever. I thought of Mom, her voice dripping disdain, her habit of protecting him no matter what. I thought of how she had once said, "Family means loyalty." I realized then, she never meant me, but pain is an architect. It builds resolve where once there was only trust. So when I booked my ticket home, I didn't just pack clothes. I packed intention. Because this story wasn't going to end in Naples. This story would end with a courier ringing her doorbell, and with her begging me to listen. The courier's knock was only the beginning. But before I tell you what was inside that towering package, I need you to understand how deep the rot ran, how carefully they carved me out of their perfect picture. Back home, Florence lit up my brother's smile in glossy photos posted everywhere. White roses, golden chandeliers, their arms linked in silk and champagne. His bride looked radiant, but I couldn't see her beauty without seeing my own bank account drained into her gown, her venue, her fantasy. $77,000. My contribution wasn't written in the program, wasn't mentioned in their toasts. I was a ghost sponsor, erased, ridiculed, discarded. Mom liked it that way. She'd always treated me like a shadow, and my brother like a crown prince. At family dinners, she'd laugh at his smallest jokes, beam at his stories, while my words slid off the table like crumbs brushed to the floor. This time, she'd gone further, helping him humiliate me in another country, dismissing me with a cruel text. Your fault. Always my fault. So I sat in my apartment, the silence pressing against me, scrolling those pictures until they blurred. My phone buzzed again, friends tagging me, asking, "Why aren't you there?" Their confusion was its own humiliation. I didn't reply. Instead, I went online late into the night, searching for something precise. Not flowers. Not jewelry. Not even money. No, something weightier. Something that couldn't be ignored when it arrived at her door. The moment I clicked confirm order, I felt the tiniest shift in the air, like justice had exhaled. Because for once, it wouldn't be my fault. It would be hers. The courier called to confirm delivery. 4 feet tall, wrapped in plain brown, impossible to miss. I pictured Mom standing at the door in her pressed cardigan, feigning surprise like she always did when the world didn't bend to her. But this time, it wouldn't be roses or wine she could parade around the neighborhood. This time, she would have to look at herself. The irony was delicious. She'd trained me to plan, to organize, to handle every detail so my brother could shine. She never realized those same skills could be sharpened into a weapon. My weapon wasn't loud. It was elegant, quiet, undeniable. I remembered Florence again, the fairy lights I paid for dangling above heads that turned their backs on me. Their laughter haunted me like a hymn of exclusion. I replayed Mom's words, "Stop faking confusion." I could almost hear her voice cracking when she realized the courier wasn't bringing her admiration, but revelation. At work, I answered emails with a calm face, while beneath the desk my leg trembled with anticipation. Nights blurred into dawns as I waited, checking the delivery tracker like a countdown to truth. The morning it arrived, my phone buzzed, not with her dismissal, not with her disdain, but with her trembling voice. Tears clogged her throat. "Can I please pay you back?" she whispered, as if the weight of the box had finally crushed her arrogance. I didn't answer right away. I let silence stretch, because silence had always been my role in this family. But now silence was hers to choke on. And I smiled, because for the first time, she understood the cost of erasing me. The courier had delivered more than a package. It had delivered a mirror. Her call didn't end with that plea. It spiraled. She sniffled, stammered, tried to backpedal in ways I'd never heard from her before. You know, I didn't mean it. It was a misunderstanding. Your brother just thought it would be funny. Lies poured out of her like cheap perfume, sickly sweet, meant to mask the stench of betrayal. But I'd learned the truth. When people show you who they are, believe them. She had shown me for 25 years. My brother too. And now, finally, they couldn't outrun the reflection sitting in their living room, 4 feet tall, sealed in polished wood, with a plaque engraved just for them. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't violent. It was symbolic. Inside was every receipt, every floral invoice, every catering contract with my signature on the bottom. Stacked neatly, ribbon-bound, displayed like an art installation of sacrifice. My $77,000 transformed into a monument of their shame. I pictured Mom lifting the lid, her face draining of color as those papers confronted her. Each page was proof, each dollar a reminder that I was the silent architect of their grandeur. And they had laughed me into exile. The beauty was in the undeniability. She couldn't crumple it up. She couldn't call it confusion. The courier had set it down in her living room like judgment itself. When she whispered again, "Please, let us fix this," I finally answered. My voice was steady, calm. The voice of someone who no longer begged for a seat at their table. "I don't want it fixed," I told her. "I want it remembered." The line went quiet, and in that silence, I heard her walls crack. The silence on the line lingered so long, I thought she'd hung up. But then I heard it. A shaky breath, the kind of sound you make when the ground beneath you finally shifts. For the first time in my life, Mom wasn't the one towering over me. She was the one looking up, struggling to find her balance. I leaned back in my chair, letting her discomfort wash over me. All those years she brushed off my tears, mocked my feelings, excused my brother's cruelty. This was her reckoning, and I didn't need to raise my voice. Finally, she spoke. "What do you want from me?" The question carried both fear and defeat. I almost laughed. For years I had wanted her approval, her warmth, her recognition. But hearing her ask now, stripped of power, I realized I didn't crave those things anymore. What I wanted was much simpler and far more powerful. "I want you," I said slowly, "to understand what it feels like to be invisible until someone needs your money." She gasped, and I knew the papers had done their work. The courier hadn't just delivered receipts, it had delivered a truth she couldn't escape. That night, my brother texted me for the first time since Florence. Gone was the smug cruelty. His message was panicked, desperate. "Please don't ruin us. I'll pay you back. Just tell me what to do." I stared at the screen, the irony burning brighter than any chandelier at his wedding. For once, he was the one begging me. For once, I held the strings. And I wasn't planning to let go. His texts came in waves. First apologies, then excuses, then bribes disguised as promises. "I'll send you half tonight. Please, Alyssa, don't tell anyone." You don't understand how stressed I was. But I did understand. I understood perfectly. Stress was never an excuse when it was mine. Only when it was his. My whole life had been a collection of moments where my needs were minimized, my sacrifices erased, my loyalty ridiculed. Now, every message he sent felt like a confession he didn't know he was writing. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I let him stew in the silence, just as I had been forced to stew in humiliation walking through Naples with my useless dress and worthless ticket. Meanwhile, Mom tried again. She called at odd hours, her voice smaller each time. "We can fix this as a family." Family. The word rolled off her tongue like it meant something. I wanted to scream. Where was family when I was alone in a foreign city? Mocked as your punchline? But I didn't scream. I didn't even raise my voice. Revenge wasn't rage, it was restraint. It was holding the line while they squirmed under the weight of their own choices. I printed out one of the photos from Florence, my brother beaming under the lights I paid for. I slid it into a frame, but instead of glass, I covered it with the receipt total, $77,000. Then I mailed it back to him. 2 days later, another text lit up my phone. This one wasn't arrogant. It was broken. You win. Just tell me how. And that was the moment I knew the balance had shifted forever. I let his last text sit untouched for hours. The words glared from my screen, stripped of his usual cruelty. You win. Just tell me how. It was almost poetic, watching the man who once smirked at my humiliation now typing in desperation, unsure of his footing without me propping him up. When I finally replied, my message was short. Start by admitting the truth. Out loud. To everyone. I didn't ask for repayment, not yet. Money could be transferred in seconds, but acknowledgement? That was priceless. He tried to negotiate, begged me to keep it private. But I'd already learned the lesson. Silence protects abusers. This time, silence belonged to me. That evening I saw it. A post on his social media, shaky, rushed, but visible to every friend, every relative, every guest who had toasted beneath my fairy lights. He wrote about my contribution, about my exile in Naples, about the cruelty disguised as a prank. And at the bottom, I don't deserve her forgiveness, but I will pay her back every cent. The comments flooded fast. Shock, pity, shame. For once, the spotlight he adored turned harsh, exposing instead of flattering. Mom called again, but not to scold. Her voice cracked with something I'd never heard before, something like respect. She whispered, I don't know how to face you. I answered simply, you don't. Not yet. And in that pause, I felt the years of imbalance start to level. Not through shouting, not through revenge soaked in rage, but through truth that could no longer be buried. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The repayment came, but not the way they expected. My brother transferred the $77,000 in full, every cent arriving in my account like a confession written in numbers. But the money wasn't the victory. It was just proof. Proof that he could no longer erase me. What mattered more was the shift that followed. Family friends who once looked through me began calling, apologizing for not knowing, for not seeing. Invitations arrived addressed to me directly, not +1, if convenient. The spotlight that once blinded me now felt warm, steady, my own. And Mom, oh Mom. She didn't bark commands anymore. Her voice, once sharp enough to cut, softened each time we spoke. She stopped pretending, stopped making excuses. She asked questions instead, hesitant ones, as if learning a language she'd never bothered to study. The language of respect. But here's the secret I never told them. I didn't want their money. I didn't even want their approval. I wanted my power back. The power they tried to strip from me with every smirk, every shrug, every cruel dismissal. And when I stood alone in Naples, humiliated, that power was born. So when my brother begged for forgiveness, I didn't grant it. I didn't need to. Forgiveness implies debt, and I was no longer in deficit. I had collected my due. My justice wasn't in vengeance. It was in peace. In knowing they would never again laugh at my expense without remembering the courier's knock, the towering package, the mirror of their shame. I closed my eyes, exhaled, and smiled. Not the smile of someone erased, but of someone rewritten. My story was finally mine.